Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Calling for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys. So, what am I discussing here today? In a sense, I'm discussing parallel time. Am I discussing the actual time band? In a more or less, I'm discussing the doorway between parallel time. You know, in Dark Shadows, for those who are familiar with this, you're gonna you know that the parallel time was in the East Wing. The room was in the East Wing. So the doorway to parallel time was in the East Wing. Now keep in mind, this is the only parallel time room we actually see until we see another parallel time room in the same East Wing. So, that being said, we see two different parallel time bands in one part of the house. So, did did people say Jeremiah Collins? Again, keep in mind, Jeremiah may have helped construct this house, but so did Joshua. So who knew about the parallel time rooms? Did Jeremiah? Did Joshua? It's a question you have to ask, or did both of them know? So, and the other question becomes this: just because this is the only parallel time we see, or doorway we see, if you will, because that's ultimately what this is. This is a doorway to another time band. Not necessarily a time period. You're not going back in time or forward in time. You're going to a alternate universe, if you will. Not necessarily what I classify it as a mirror universe, if you would. Though no, because while the characters do look like you, they aren't exactly who you are. They made different decisions that led them down different roads. So here's this doorway. It's the one doorway we've seen twice. Um, the question becomes, and there are more than one question. So here's the first question: is this the only doorway to a parallel time band universe? I'm not necessarily meaning in the house. I mean throughout Collinwood. Is there? Let's use another one. We were introduced to Caleb Sayre Collins's house. Now, I've talked about that house on this channel prior, and I'll talk about it here again as well. This is not going to be a short video, so I apologize in advance. So, Caleb Sayre Collins, remember, he had a condition in his will that nobody, and I mean nobody, and so did he, would be able to buy that house until 1971. So keep in mind, that's not for another couple years when this is discovered. Again, it was discovered in 1967. That's not for another couple years. Um, so parallel time takes place, what, in 1970? So keep that in mind. We're, we're what, a year or two from them being able to, someone that actually lived in Caleb's house. Small problem is there's no Victoria Winters around that wants the house anymore. So there's that. So here's the question: was there other parallel time universes within Caleb's house? Keep in mind, Victoria Winters said she thought she saw a schooner from another time band approaching, on the sea. So we know there's some sort of, this house has something to do with time itself. What exactly, we don't know. We get a hint of it with Victoria. And no, I want to make this clear. In my opinion, I don't think this is Victoria hallucinating. I don't think this is Victoria letting you know she's going to have the ability to time travel. Though I do think that's something they're going to tie in with this new series, that she does have the ability to time travel. Remember Sam Beckett and Quantum Leap, my friends. Only. You're not going to need a machine. So there's that. With Dark Shadows, it's just naturally done. Okay. I would assume. I would assume they're going to take a page out of John Philip Betancourt's Return to Dark Shadows. That she's going to be able to control the time travel. Shout out to him, by the way. Huge shout out to him. Um, that would be my guess. Now, so I don't think that's something they're hinting to you when Vicky says she saw a schooner. I do think they're more making a hint about Caleb Sayre Collins' house, the house itself, the house that nobody is allowed to live in. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about Burke Devlin, who, though he knows the Collins family, he is in a sense not a Collins himself. And then there's Victoria Winters, who is unofficially the daughter of Elizabeth Collins' daughter, though it hasn't been made officially. We all know she is. None of them could have this house. And even if Carolyn herself, someone we know and everyone else knows is Elizabeth's daughter, wanted to buy the house, guess what? She can't buy the house. So it lets you know a couple things. Not only did Caleb Sayre Collins not trust complete strangers, it's a point I brought up to my buddy Patrick McRae when we did this video. He doesn't trust his own family. It makes you question, did Caleb Sayre Collins know about the Leviathan and maybe perhaps his family had a connection to them? We don't know. And again, I don't want to say that that's the case and he knew, because again, that hasn't been made officially canon yet. But in the sense, you got to wonder, why does this get done? Is it just to protect the secret? Could it be? Sure, but why the 5 year? People might say, well, why did he have to have a limit on it? Because he could only set a limit on it. He could only set a limit of 100 years after he died. That was the state law. So he set the max limit he could set in that state at that time prior to his death. So no one could buy that house. It kept people out of the house, or at least for the most part, until Barnabas, Burke, and Victoria walked inside of it and they found a little tiny handkerchief. I don't think that's all Barnabas found, by the way. I call bullshit on that. Barnabas is a snooper. Okay, every Collins family member snoops, especially Barnabas, and nobody likes getting information first more than Barnabas Collins. Okay, he is the one person, the one character. Hey, I don't give a shit who tries to get that information. I'm getting it first. So, did Barnabas know something? I gotta believe he suspected something. I don't know about knew something. But we don't actually get the complete history of the Caleb Sayre Collins house. We don't know what its powers are. We know it has something to do with time. So is there another parallel time universe or doorway, if you will, inside Caleb's house? We know there's one in the Great House. My answer would be yes, there is, and there's probably more than one. I would say the house itself can actually travel through time. It's something probably Caleb Sayre Collins did not want left out. Therefore, that's why no one can live in that goddamn house. Also, he didn't trust his own family members. I do believe Caleb was suspecting his own family members of certain things. Now, whether that be Leviathan or something else, he was suspecting them of something. This isn't something you just do on a whim. When you make out a will, when a fictional character makes out a will, it's not just a will of, oh, I'm just making this out. I don't know. He made it out with a purpose of, you know what? I know I don't trust strangers, but I don't trust my own family members either. So that being said, yes, I believe there's a parallel time universe in Caleb Sayre Collins' house. Is there one in the old house? My only issue with there being one now is we've been in the old house so many times throughout the original series that they haven't shown one. So maybe not there, But keep in mind, the old house does have its own supernatural presence. It has the ghost of Josette. Angelique tends to roam there. Barnabas's coffin is there. So, is there another presence we haven't seen there? Perhaps, but I don't believe that there's a parallel time universe in it. What about the town of Collinsport? Is there a parallel time doorway in the town itself? I would venture yes, considering we haven't been inside every place in town. Now, I'm going to give you one, even though we've been inside there, I do believe there's one lurking in there. The Collins family cannery itself, that there is a doorway to a parallel time universe somewhere. Probably, probably in the frame, if not Roger's office, somewhere else. I would dare say, though, they would probably use Roger's office. Um, Now, even though we don't ever see one, it doesn't mean there isn't one there. Remember, it's all parallel time's all about the time you open a door and you actually visibly see it. So there is that. Again, certain times, certain ways that the parallel time universe does exist is, hey, if the door's open and there's darkness, there's nothing there. So it could be just nothing was ever there at that given point in time. And another place that doesn't really get talked about, though, too, either, is Nicholas Blair's house, of all things. And it makes me wonder. Nicholas had a lot of secrets in that house, Angelique being one of them. What else did he have in that house? Was there a parallel time universe? I gotta believe Nicholas would have known if there was or wasn't. Keep in mind, Nicholas wasn't exactly the most person who wanted people in his house for a specific reason, and I don't think the reason's just Angelique herself. Now, do I think there's one? No, I think Nicholas would have spelled that out. Also, I think the biggest thing with Nicholas's house is his house isn't owned by him. His house is owned by his master, Diablos, the devil. And, I do think that somehow that house and part of it is a doorway from hell itself. That's what I think that house really is. But we'll see if that ever gets used as that. Now, here's another big question. Has a parallel time character, being one we've not seen, because we've seen most of them in the 1970 parallel time. We've seen, but there are ones we haven't seen, like the Victoria Winters. Again, we don't know what different choice Victoria Winters made. What choice they made. So did a parallel time character come from its time band into the regular time, and are they among the other characters without them knowing? This could be a possibility. People have talked about Victoria Winters being, a Victoria Winters coming from a parallel time universe. How do we know one hasn't already done that without us knowing? Again, the greatest thing in horror or anything else, whether it's Dark Shadows, is just because you don't see it happen doesn't mean it didn't. So a Victoria Winters, a parallel time version of her, could have came out of the East Wing and just bypassed her actual self and said, oh no, I'm not going down that road. I'm going down my road. I'm leaving. I'm blowing this popsicle stand. And she is the Victoria Winters alive out there someplace. And yes, she is related to the Collins family. She knows she's related to the Collins family, and there is that. So she's living a cushiony life, and she doesn't really give a two shits about the Collins family. Or perhaps that this Victoria Winters has been plotting a long-given revenge of the family that wronged her of the money she was owed. That is a possibility. Are there other parallel time characters that came through that we didn't see? Sure, there could, look, there could be a character we just have not seen in parallel time that perhaps maybe came the. Keep in mind, if there's a regular time Joe Haskell and he went to Wyncliffe, right? We know what happened to our Joe Haskell. We know what happened to our Chris Jennings. Chris Jennings left. We know what happened to our Bill Malloy, right? Bill Malloy died. What happened to the alternate timelines, Bill Malloy? What happened to the alternate timelines, Joe Haskell? You know, again, it brings the question of the parallel time characters you don't see. What happened to them? Here's one for you. What happened to the parallel time Laura Collins? Was she a Phoenix in parallel time? Or wasn't she? We know Angelique is still a witch in parallel time, but a different kind of witch in parallel time. So there is that, and she has a twin sister, which is really nice. There's nothing wrong with two Laura Parkers, right? Two. God, if that does not give you a reason to watch Parallel Time, I don't know what will. It's, oh God. So again, we know what happened with our regular time characters. What happened to the parallel time characters? Keep in mind, the Julia Hoffman of Parallel Time gets 86th by our Julia Hoffman. So, what happened to Joe Haskell? Keep in mind, there was no Dr. Julia Hoffman in 1970 Parallel Time. We don't know what went on with Chris Jennings in 1970 Parallel Time. What became of him? Was he a werewolf? We don't know. We don't know. Again, Tom Jennings, there's another great example. We know our Tom Jennings became a vampire and got staked. What happened to the parallel time Tom Jennings? These are questions that are still left unanswered in Dark Shadows. And in fact, there are several. But these are parallel time questions that I've sort of put in here because that's what the video is about. Parallel time and its characters or characteristics that are still left unanswered. We don't know if those parallel time characters are alive or dead, or if they came out of their own parallel time band and into our time band. Because if they did, then they are indeed out there and they could cause all sorts of hell. So there is that. And that's something I really wanted to touch on here too. That just because we haven't seen them come out through parallel time doesn't mean they didn't. Now, it doesn't mean they did either, but keep in mind that we never see certain characters in parallel time. We never see a Jennings. We never see a Haskell. Why? Is it because they're dead? Or is it because, well, they're not there? They found a way through another parallel time door. And they're in our time band and causing all sorts of chaos that we don't know about yet, or have caused all sorts of chaos. And keep in mind that, you know, if our Barnabas went through parallel time, and he did, walked through the door and then got stuck there for a while, then it means that somebody from that time band can come through as well. And there is that. So, my friends, that is my questions I'm going to leave you with. And I hope you give me some responses. Guys, gals, ghouls, demons, creatures of the night, I want to thank everybody. You guys have a great day.